Welcome, everybody. Good night. It is the newscast here on Monday night. It's March 2nd, 2026. I'm joined by Rebecca Biblioteca, Radio Free Mormon. How are the two of you this evening?
Great. Thank you.
Fantastic. A little rainy. It's raining really hard right here, but we're hanging in there.
We had almost a record day in Cedar City the other day. It was 69 degrees. The record was 70, and now it's back to being really cold out. I'm not liking it, but 'tis life. All right, so let's jump into it. There's the thumbnail for tonight. Joseph Smith owned slaves, ? These are the stories for tonight. More media coverage for Joseph Smith painting at Morehouse. That'll be handled by Rebecca Biblioteca. We've got Big Boo by BYU. That's also Rebecca, although I think we've got the stories maybe a little switched up here. Update on gang violence at LDS Ward. That's Radio Free Mormon. We've got the LDS Church addresses the USA-Iran conflict. I guess I should say USA and Israel and Iran, although now you're starting to see some other countries jump in, at least on the periphery. Next up, update on kissing Mormon Layton school employee. That'll also be Radio Free Mormon. And then we've got a story from Rebecca, has the church changed logos? And another one from Rebecca, dirty soda craze, spreads carbonation and Mormonism. That'll be interesting to see how they're accomplishing that. And then we've got former BYU wide receiver Parker Kingston appears in court. Is that URFM?
Yes,
Excellent.
it is.
And then we've got one last story, more Mormon moment. There's been a lot of those. I think it's just one moment that goes on forever and ever and ever, even if we wish it would go away. But with that, our first story, Rebecca Biblioteca.
Thank you very much. Yes, this is the story that keeps on, as you said, like the Mormon moment, just going and going. And I think this is almost, is it the third or fourth week in a row that I've been reporting on this painting? The first time I reported on it, they were going to unveil it and hang it in a gallery, the Martin Luther King Memorial Gallery at Morehouse College. And so I reported on how it was going to happen. Then it did happen, and I reported on how it did happen and how the dean made a speech comparing Joseph Smith to Lincoln before Lincoln. That's kind of where things got interesting. Some of the students there sort of tried to figure out who is this Joseph Smith who's going to be hung in our gallery, did a quick Google search, that's really all it takes, and sort of wrote a letter and said, this may not fit with the values of our college or the intent of this gallery. And in this picture here, if you look down in the bottom right, I did do an episode with the student who is spearheading this whole thing. Also did an episode on Mormonish. I know I'm like plugging my own show on our show, but these are really informative with Ron Jorgensen about the phrase Lincoln before Lincoln. Was Joseph Smith really Lincoln before Lincoln? But since that time, it really has kind of caught fire in the media like I thought it might. There's been a news story, and there's been some more things in print news, and an opinion piece up here in the right-hand corner where somebody said, you know, what's wrong with this? Hang somebody that's controversial in a gallery. It'll start conversation. It'll spark debate, which that's an interesting point of view. So you guys have been with me this whole time, and I've been reporting on this. Did you guys think that this would be kind of what it's turning into when we first started talking about it? Bill, did you have any thoughts on that?
I think that a university, this is primarily for Black African Americans, they're putting President Nelson up in that college and they're putting Joseph Smith up in that college makes absolutely no sense at all to me. So I did expect that this story would gain some traction, and the students there and the community wouldn't let go of that easily.
Yeah. What about you, RFM? What did you think? Did you have any predictions for this story? Because I kept saying catch fire, you know, just meaning it's such a provocative situation.
It is provocative. My understanding is that it is an honor to have one's portrait hung in this particular hall. And therefore, I would think that's what it normally would be. Of course, they get to decide what it's used for. But you could pick millions of people who are provocative if you want to start conversations. I thought this was supposed to be more of an honor. I may be mistaken. I did think, however, that it's just too bad that this is not a painting of the temple, although there is a temple in the background, Rebecca, because then you'd be in seventh heaven, or at least the third.
There is a temple in the background, and the artist has said, although Joseph Smith did not live to see this temple completed, it's Nauvoo, she thought it represented, the focus of his life. So there's a lot of symbolism in that temple painting. And again, that was one of the complaints of the students, is that the dean seemed to have chosen this particular portrait without really letting anybody know what was going on. So this really caught my eye. This is the more recent thing that I saw in the news. Morehouse should not have honored a man who owned slaves and married children. And this is written by former alumni of Morehouse. And so that's why I thought this was really fascinating. And we're just going to kind of read through this, because own slaves, now that's a really hot button triggering thing to say. And is there anything to back this up? Where would they have gotten this idea? Again, how can they possibly understand all of Mormonism? All of us work at it for decades, right? And don't. But this letter was really interesting. So I'm going to read this first part and then ask you guys what you think of it. It says, we represent 3 generations of Morehouse men, graduates from the class of 1967, 1984, and 2012, who are publicly expressing opposition to the college's recent decision to install an oil portrait of Joseph Smith, founder of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, in the Martin Luther King International Chapel on campus. It is in the spirit of Reverend Dr. Benjamin Elijah Mays, the Baptist minister, theologian, and spiritual mentor of Dr. Martin Luther King, who led Morehouse from 1940 to 1967 as Morehouse men and as ordained clergy and educators, that we write in profound protest of the decision to honor Joseph Smith. Does it surprise you guys at all that the alumnus, it's not just the students now, it's the alumnus who are getting on board? What do you think of that, Bill? I mean, this was something new.
Yeah. And generally speaking, when you get into colleges like this, I mean, it's the folks who have been there as students in generations past that take the initiative to support the school in lots of ways, including financially. And, it makes sense that the students might have been the first ones to pick up on this, but as the news got louder and louder, to hear the alumni begin to raise their voice in disagreement of it, has been interesting to see. And I still don't think the legs on this are done. And stories like this in the past, when they happen, there are lots of moments where somebody retracts the thing or gives the painting back or sends the money back that direction. And the church has been involved in those kinds of moments themselves.
Yeah, I know. Can you imagine? What do you think, our fam alumni now discovering this is happening and profoundly protest? That's huge.
Yeah, I don't want to get in the middle of anything, but it does strike me that it would be reasonable for the person who was in charge of making this decision to have at least foreseen that it might be controversial, and therefore want to put it out there for other people to be able to express their opinions about. On the other hand, the fact that this person did not do so might indicate that they wanted it up and they knew there was going to be blowback from it. I don't know what's going on. Which of those is true? By the way, is it only in the title that it says that Joseph Smith owned slaves, or is it in the body of the article too?
Yes, I'm going to read the next thing. I just wanted to get your guys' take on this, because I agree there's a couple different reasons that could be why this painting is hanging there. So yes, let's move forward to see, what these alumnus think and what they're saying. They go on to say, indeed, it is a bitter irony that the unveiling of his portrait took place at the beginning of Black History Month in a chapel named after one who would never compromise his integrity for anything or anyone, let alone money. So right there, that's kind of perhaps a jab at why they think this painting may be there at this point. We've talked about that before. Historical records show that Joseph Smith owned enslaved people. Although he eventually expressed opposition to slavery during his 1844 presidential campaign, his church did not prohibit slavery, and its members continue to own enslaved people. So before I ask you guys what you think about this, I just want to kind of think, this is where I'm going with this. Why do these alumnus think that historical records show that he owned slaves? Because I do not think that. I do not think he was a racist. I also do not think he was an abolitionist. And I've been talking to different people today, specifically Ron Jorgensen, who's an excellent researcher, and Ganesh Sharian, who also, just wrote his book about Joseph Smith, to see why it would say in this article that its historical records show that he owned slaves. Because I I believe that's going too far, and that's a little too provocative. So one thing that was brought to my attention was a Thomas B. Marsh affidavit. This was an affidavit to Governor Boggs regarding the looting and burning of Gallatin by the Mormons to show that they were hostile to Missouri. So this was part of the Mormon War, which is also very dicey. And Mormons were looting Millstown, I think, and Gallatin. And Thomas B. Marsh is telling Governor Boggs about this because he's trying to make the case that Mormons are not good for Missouri. So he says, this is Thomas B. Marsh, the same evening, a number of footmen came up from the direction of Millport. And this means these are Mormons. They are laden with property, which I was informed consisted of beds, clocks, and other household furniture. Okay, so they're looting the Missourians. They've run them out and they're taking their goods. That same night, I think, about 3 wagons were dispatched for about 40 bee gums, and the next day saw several gums where they were spitting them up and taking the honey and burning the gums, in which business of taking out the honey. But few were engaged for fear, as they said, they would be called on as witnesses against them. Then Wright returned from Millport and informed Smith that the people were gone. Again, these are the Missourians driven out of the towns, and the property was left. That's the property that they were looting in their wagons. Smith asked him if they had left any of the Negroes for them, and Wright replied no, upon which somebody laughed and said to Smith, "You have lost your Negro then." So that's a very interesting affidavit. I'm going to ask you guys what you think about that. Do you think, Bill, that something like that indicates that Joseph Smith, not proof that he held enslaved people, that he would be, on board? Maybe that was something he was looking to do. What do you think that means? Or do you think Thomas Marsh is not a credible source in this?
Well, I'll just go back a slide first and just note historical records show that Joseph Smith owned enslaved people. And then it goes on, and then it says his church did not prohibit slavery and his members continued to own enslaved people. I would just want to note those are two very different things. Yeah. And I don't think the latter reflects on the founder of a religious system upon which members belong to from various places in the United States and overseas. But when we get to the quotes that you just shared, this is the first time I'd seen these. Oh. And I do think it's interesting. You've got, this is Marsh's affidavit to Governor Boggs. I'm intrigued enough that I would want to look further into it. But like you, I've never seen any concrete evidence that Joseph Smith owned slaves.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think, RFM?
My understanding of the historical record is that Joseph Smith made some statements on both sides of the issue. Mm-hmm. And the more pro-slavery statements that he made were naturally when they were in Missouri during that time period, and trying not to get the Missourians as mad at them as possible, which they did not succeed in doing, of course. But no, I don't know of any historian that says that he owned slaves or enslaved peoples. So I just think that maybe they got that goofed up.
Yeah, no, that's what I kind of think.
Saying things on different sides of the issue as opposed to actually owning somebody.
Exactly. And we read more of their article. They kind of say that. But yeah, I think it's good to clear that up because that is not what we're saying. Now, Ganesh had an interesting take on, just perhaps the idea that slavery, was kind of part of the soup of Mormonism. He, of course, talked about Jane Manning James, who was a servant in Joseph's house, and that there may not have been too much of a distinction between servant and slavery. Perhaps at the time that might be confusing. And Jane was later posthumously sealed to Joseph as an eternal servant. Of course, that was Joseph F. Smith years later, i.e. slave. She was asked in her lifetime if she'd like to be sealed as a child to Joseph and Emma, but declined because she later said she didn't understand what that meant. Ganesh also pointed out that in section 132, it could be read as a manifesto for slavery on the eternal servant basis, where if you are not righteously coupled, meaning you are not sealed to somebody, you're a single person in heaven, you are eternally to serve people that are in these polygamous relationships, and that's slavery in the highest realm of heaven. So slavery is kind of there in a sense, but I agree with you. There is no evidence that he actually ever owned enslaved people. Now, we won't read through these, but if anybody wants to pause on these, as Bill alluded to, when he did run for president and put out that nice pamphlet that we had a picture of earlier, he seemed to kind of soften what he was saying. But Ron Jorgensen and I go through this in our episode together. He didn't necessarily say, I'm going to stamp out slavery as an abolitionist. He said, I trust the God-fearing people of the South. And if they ever are to decide that they don't want to do this anymore, as a government, we will make sure, that we purchase the enslaved people and help them go where they need to go and, purchase them from the Southerners. So it's not necessarily what people are saying that it is. And there's wiggle room in there. But I think definitely the alumnus here hit it on the head where they said he kind of changed depending on the political scenario and what he needed to say. So any final thoughts on his campaign for president and some of the statements there, Bill?
Joseph Smith, I think RFM made a great point. I mean, he would say what he needed to, depending on the geographic location he's in, depending on which folks he's talking to, depending on which issues at hand. The last thing I'll say here, I put this up in the chat, but at one point, Emma invited Jane to be adopted as a child into the Smith family by a priesthood sealing. You were mentioning this, Rebecca. Jane declined, misunderstanding the unfamiliar new practice, but she firmly believed, and I'll continue here in a second, but just to note, the Wikipedia wants to claim that the only reason she declined it was because she was unfamiliar with the new practice. Joseph was practicing all kinds of sealings. Maybe she did know what was going on. Maybe she didn't. But it does end there saying that she firmly believed in Joseph in his prophetic roles. And this is a quote from Eliza Jane Manning James. I did know the prophet Joseph. He was the finest man I ever saw on earth. I was certain he was a prophet because I knew it. And so I know people in the chat, when we're critical of the church, we're going to make notes of, Eliza Jane Manning James is living in the Smith home. She's a servant there to one degree or another. It's easy to want to judge that as being slavery, but my impression of the history is that's not the case, and we ought to at least acknowledge that she thought fondly of the prophet Joseph Smith, living in his home, being a servant there with all the other stuff that was going on in the residence of Joseph Smith.
Yeah, if you can leave when you want, it's not slavery.
Mm-mm.
That's a very good point. And there's even a movie called Emma and Jane, which talks about their relationship, their wonderful, close relationship together. And I will go back just a little bit to read the last paragraph here before I jumped off into that. So they go on to say, after the historical records and enslaved people, which we've kind of said we don't believe that is the case. It says, but that is not the whole story. Beyond slavery, and again, these are the words of the alumnus in the article. Beyond slavery, there is the issue of polygamy and marrying underage girls. So these people have, done some research. They have figured this out. So let's see what else they say here. They say Morehouse legacy of one of ethical leadership. Joseph Smith married dozens of women, some estimated between 30 and 40, including girls as young as 14. These facts are not peripheral. They are central to his life and legacy. Therefore, we must ask, what lesson are we teaching when we elevate a man because he ostensibly shifted his stance on slavery late in life? So they're picking up on what both of you guys said. During a political campaign, while minimizing or overlooking his exploitation of women and children. And then they finish by saying, let's see, I'll read it here. The issue is not whether Joseph ever opposed slavery. It is whether his full legacy aligns with the values Morehouse claims to embody. Are we as Morehouse men telling women and girls, especially in this era shaped by the reckoning around Jeffrey Epstein, that powerful men's misconduct can be excused if their political resume is compelling enough? Morehouse College stands as one of America's most revered institutions. For generations, it has shaped Black male leaders grounded in dignity, discipline, and responsibility to the community. Its legacy is inseparable from the broader struggle for Black liberation and from a commitment to ethical leadership. Mays created the paradigm of a Morehouse man is a man who professors who mentor, nurture, and encourage. His vision was unwavering. Morehouse would be defined by academic excellence, moral courage, and intellectual rigor. He challenged us to use our education not for selfish gain, but to serve our communities and change the world. That charge has never left us. And that's where that ends. So I will just, I think I've spoken enough on it, ask you, Bill and RFM, what are your final thoughts on the Morehouse alumnus? And do you think, I think Bill alluded to this, is it just only starting to get legs? Will we see more of this going forward? What do you think, Bill?
I'll just reiterate that. I don't think this is done. And I think there is still, as people, students and alumni, and maybe other folks who donate to the school begin to continue to raise their voice and new people come forward, it'll be interesting to see what happens, but I don't think this story's over yet.
No.
And it will depend, of course, on whether they take the portrait down, or is it still not up yet?
It is not hung up yet. It's in a holding area, waiting area. They have to move some things over. Right now, President Nelson is right next to Abraham Lincoln. They're going to move President Nelson over, put Joseph Smith right in the middle with Abraham Lincoln on the, that combination there just kind of blows my mind, but they need to make some room because there are hundreds of portraits that they have to shift in order to put that there.
Then I will say that it depends on whether they agree and say, you're right, that we're not going to put Joseph Smith's portrait up. And then I don't know, refund whatever money they have to the church. I don't know how that's working behind the scenes, but one suspects there's something going on there. I think that the most powerful part of this opinion piece is the rhetorical question. Are we, as Morehouse men, telling women and girls that powerful men's misconduct can be excused if their political resume is compelling enough?
Yeah.
That is the most powerful sentence to me in the entirety of the opinion piece. And I think that sells it unequivocally. I don't know how one argues with that.
Yep, I agree. We will watch. And who knows, I may be reporting on this every week if something new comes out. So back to you, Bill. We'll keep watching. Oops.
Sorry, this will be the next story here with the former BYU receiver. So RFM.
Oh, okay. Former BYU wide receiver Parker Kingston appears in court for rape allegations. This was February 25th, 2026. By way of introduction to a video clip that I'm going to play about this, we're going to play part of a newscast, but I want you to understand, because I needed to find out myself what a preliminary hearing is in Utah, because there's some discussion in this video clip about a preliminary hearing. What this appearance was on the 25th of February, not the preliminary hearing, but they're talking about when they're going to set the preliminary hearing and whether the alleged victim is going to be testifying at the preliminary hearing. Now, things are different and done differently here in Washington, but in Utah, at a preliminary hearing, criminal cases, the purpose or the primary purpose is to determine if probable cause exists, meaning there is enough evidence to believe a crime was committed and the defendant committed it to justify proceeding to trial. So this is an interesting way of doing it. It's different than the way it is up here. Up here, the judge already has a pass over the affidavit of probable cause to determine whether there's probable cause to even allow the case to be filed in the first instance. But here, apparently, it can be filed before it's brought before a judge, and it's only brought before a judge at a preliminary hearing. So this is where the state has to present their evidence to the court. The defendant is there and the defense attorney is there, and they get to hear about what evidence the state has and what the weaknesses in the state's case or strengths might be. So having said that, that's what a preliminary hearing is. And now we have this clip, which will tell us what's going on.
Accused of rape appeared in court today in Washington County. Our Southern Utah correspondent Cannon Seacrest is at the courthouse on more on what happened today and what comes next.
Parker Trent Kingston appeared virtually before a judge this morning as attorneys discussed how this case will move forward. A preliminary hearing is now set for March 23rd at 9 a.m. after the defense asked to have it moved up from its original April date. And Kingston did not speak during today's hearing. Kingston, 21 years old, is charged with first-degree felony rape in connection with an alleged incident on February 23rd of 2025 at a residence in St. George. During today's hearing, attorneys discussed discovery, and no additional discovery was requested. One major question still remains whether the alleged victim will testify at the preliminary hearing.
May I ask if Mr. Sham's going to have the alleged victim testify?
That's to be determined. We haven't made that call yet. We need more contact, and we'll make that decision within the week.
The alleged victim's attorney has until March 18th to decide whether she will testify. That decision will also play a role in determining whether the preliminary hearing is held in person or virtually.
I think it's going to be dependent on whether the alleged victim testifies, whether we'll want to be in person or via WebEx. If she plans on testifying, I will certainly want to be in person for that.
Kingston is a Roy High School graduate and former wide receiver for BYU. Last season, he led the Cougars in receiving with 66 catches for 924 yards and 5 touchdowns. He also added rushing yards and a punt return touchdown. BYU confirmed to ABC4 that Kingston is no longer a member of the football team.
So there's the story. It's proceeding along the track through the criminal justice system there in Utah. Any thoughts about that, Rebecca?
I feel like it's a deja vu. Weren't we just reporting on Jake? Almost the same trajectory, except for then everything just kind of disappeared once he had a lawyer. So I'm curious.
It was a civil case, though, right?
And you're right. Okay, you're so right. That was a civil case, so that is different. What does it mean, RFM, that they want to move everything up? Does that mean they're confident in what they're going to present, or does that mean anything?
It may just be a matter of scheduling.
Okay.
Beyond that, I don't know. Bill, what do you think?
BYU has had a stretch here of several athletes getting into some trouble or allegations of trouble, and I don't think that's the reputation the school wants. So I imagine that there are some things happening behind the scenes to try to get more high character behavior out of those folks. But as long as they're paying athletes millions and millions of dollars to show up at the school, and now the athletes can make money off their name, image, and likeness, I think that will become more and more difficult as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, back to you, Bill.
All right. So our next story here is this church statement on the evolving situation in Iran. Church decided to publish on the 28th of February, 2026, a comment, something in the newsroom there, an official statement to address what's going on in world news. And so the church says that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is closely monitoring the evolving situation in military strikes that occurred this morning in Iran and elsewhere in the region. We express our profound concern and heartfelt compassion for all those living in harm's way. We join in prayer with families worldwide who have loved ones in the region. And this is the part I thought was interesting, only because, again, this church always says a thing, but when you look at how it treats some of its members, I thought this was an interesting thing to add. The safety and well-being of people are always a priority in a situation of this kind. Should be a priority in all situations of all kinds. But the church seems to be acknowledging that in some situations of some kinds, safety and well-being maybe is not a priority. They continue, this region is home to thousands of church members. We are in regular contact with church leaders responsible for students, faculty, and humanitarian service volunteers serving throughout the Middle East, all of whom are accounted for and safe at this time. RFM, your thoughts on this, and then Rebecca? Oh, can't hear you, RFM.
I heard that, Rebecca. So I've said this before. So I want to say, first off, the good thing, okay? I have said that the church does not act like a worldwide church. It doesn't act like the church it claims to be, because when things happen, they don't issue statements. In fact, they act like nothing's happening in the world outside of Salt Lake City. So this is good. This is good. I think it's good that they did this. Now, having said that, let me give a little constructive criticism. Try not to blather on about nothing like you do in the first paragraph and the first sentence of the second paragraph, because when you do so, you end up saying stupid things. This is a war. To say heartfelt compassion for all those living in harm's way, really, for all of them? No exceptions? Okay, I just wondered. And then the first sentence of the second paragraph, the safety and well-being of people are always a priority in a situation of this kind. Well, no, they're not, because it's war. Come on, guys. They're trying to sound so nice and beneficent that they're ignoring the reality of the situation. So having said that, those are my critiques. This region, I had no idea that they actually had a point in saying this, okay? This is interesting, and this is what I think that I wish they had elaborated on, because they actually do have a reason for coming out and making this statement, because the church has members in the area. Yeah, absolutely. Tell us about those people. Tell us where they are. You don't have to give us addresses or anything, but just tell us about it, right? Right now, you're saying they're all safe at this time. That's great. Good to know. Just a few more details. And I think this would have been really good. So next time you're going to make a statement like this, just email it to me. Let me take a go at it, and then you can put it up.
Rebecca.
I like your critique, RFM. No, I think every time, like you said, Bill, they make a statement like this, people say, well, wait, what about all the other times you didn't make a statement? Why is this different? There have been other global events, other huge events, scenarios that are very serious. Why this time? And it's interesting, as I've been watching social media, unfortunately, there's a lot of doomsday rhetoric that has been flying around the last couple of weeks. This has pushed it off the charts, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit in more detail as I gather some stuff next week. But the fact that the church did make a statement about this, a lot of people are seeing this as a sign that, the church knew this was coming. Some people are saying maybe this is why they took their money out of the stock market, $7.7 billion. I mean, talk about looking for signs. I went over it a little bit last week. The Comet, General Conference and Easter together, earthquakes in Utah. Now, this, missiles firing and
dogs and
money
cats
out of
living together.
Yes, dogs and cats living together, and the earthquakes and the money. So
The
I don't
blood
know.
moon tomorrow morning.
And I'm so glad you said that. Yes, somebody made a whole post, somebody I actually know, about that, how important that is. So this statement, the fact that the church acknowledged it for the first time, when other things they just let slide, people are finding a lot of meaning in this.
Can I tell you what I
we'll see.
find, the meaning I find in it? It is not that President Oaks is listening to me, but that we share a similar view of how the church should behave itself in times of international incidents, and not sit by and pretend it's not happening. They should assert themselves into it and act like the church that they claim to be.
There it is. Back
Me
to
and
you.
Elder Oaks, we're like this.
You're like this.
I'm the one over here.
The other thing I'll just note here before we go to the next story, when I read the Old Testament, when I read how prophets behave, they were often speaking of battles to come and who would win and who would lose. In this church with prophets who see around corners, it didn't seem like they knew this was happening until it happened either, just like the rest of us. So there's that. Okay, next story here is BYU made a boo-boo, and I think that's Rebecca.
Yeah,
Hey,
I always,
boo-boo.
boo-boo. I always try to grab the BYU stories because, I did spend like 18 years of my life there, in between undergraduate and graduate school and then working there. So
That was a
so
well-earned BA degree, Rebecca.
it was something. And here I am on the podcast. I don't know what one has to do with the other. Anyway, so I'm calling this the BYU boo-boo. And this is a big deal. Look at this kid. I made it with AI, of course, and he's receiving an acceptance letter. You can see that all around him, there's, banners, and he's in BYU gear, and he has gotten into BYU. Have either of you, you can speak to this. What's it like to receive something like that? A college acceptance, or just getting the job? You receive something and it worked out. Do you have any experiences like that, RFM?
It's huge.
It's huge.
Oh my gosh. A letter getting into law school when I was smart enough to apply to only one. Boy, that was really smart. Putting all my eggs in one basket, and I have to wait and wait and wait from the time you take the bar at the end of July in 1989 to the time they get around to sending out the letters in October, August, September, October. Longest 2.5 months of my life.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. Bill, can you relate to that at all?
I went to a community college, so everybody got accepted where I went.
And
But you
that's
just
true.
got
My
a
kids,
certificate.
I did, but I think as long as you pay the money to get into that program, nobody was turning you down there either.
yeah, that's
Okay.
exactly right. Well, in this case, oh my goodness, what happened? I can only imagine. Completely heartbroken, BYU mistakenly tells 9 prospective students, which at the time I thought that was a huge number, but we'll talk about that later, that they are admitted to BYU. Brigham Young University is apologizing after these prospective students are given letters that are not correct. And their apology is, I know it's funny, isn't it? The church has said over and over it does not apologize, but the university is okay. They will apologize. We are truly sorry that an unfortunate error in our admissions decision notification system resulted in 9 prospective students mistakenly receiving congratulatory messages of acceptance, said BYU admissions director Chad Johnson in a statement. The admissions department reached out to those impacted to express our regret and our sincere apology. I just feel like this is devastating. Johnson added, we know that admission decisions are highly anticipated, as RFM just described, and we recognize this mistake caused confusion and disappointment. Our BYU admissions team is working to ensure this mistake does not occur in the future. Can you imagine how you would feel, RFM and then Bill, if you thought you got something, a job, a college admission, and then you didn't? Sorry, it was just a mistake. The devastation. What do you think? Can you relate, RFM?
Into each life, some rain must fall. Get over it. What's the rest of the story?
Gosh, you're so hard-hearted. Bill, any more empathy for these poor kids? Oops. Uh-oh.
Sorry, I had
There
the
you
other. Hey, being told you didn't make it, it's its own sadness.
Yes.
Being told you did, only like 3 days later to get a message like, "Hey, just kidding,
Yeah,
you didn't." That just hurts so much worse.
I know.
Psych.
Yep. No, that was
But
the reaction
I
I was going to
appreciate
get.
it though, but then I've been told that I'm flat out evil because I enjoy the discomfort of others.
Well, they're on the surface maybe, but I think we can all relate to these kids. And then, so there were a few articles about this, and then there was an actual human story. Here is one of the kids that this happened to, and he's standing there in his bedroom, and his computer table is there. And he says, for one of the students and his family, it's been a painful experience. And I'm sure he's speaking for the other students too. Owen Johnston, 18, a high school senior who lives in Oakton, Virginia, received his acceptance to BYU 2 weeks ago. At first, when I was accepted, I was really excited, he said. His mother, Talia Johnston, told KSL their family was thrilled because it's not just the kid, right? It's the family. You're calling the grandparents. You're on, a Zoom call telling everybody I got in. You're starting to make plans mentally and also even starting to put things in motion, right? So his admission to the place where both she and her husband went to school. So they are alumnus of BYU. But last week, as they went through the process of accepting the admission and finding a roommate, they realized something was off. And this is when I realized that BYU didn't even realize this, and they were not contacting the people. They were letting them get online, start filling out stuff, put me in the roommate pool. Let's figure out where I'm going to live. This is devastating to be doing that and getting like error. What's going on? I better call the school. And finding out that way, right? A rejection letter had replaced the welcome to BYU notification in his online portal. I can't even imagine. I mean, look at their faces right there. You can't imagine. After trying to get BYU officials to talk with them, the Johnsons said they eventually learned the acceptance was a mistake.
They didn't even contact them directly.
No,
they tried to do it on the slide. F the Mormons is all I can say.
And do you know what? I almost think that perhaps BYU didn't know it had happened until they started to get feedback for those 9 kids, because it's not a huge number.
They
It's not
slipped
a
in
huge number.
the resignation. I mean, they slipped in the rejection letter. They did know. I believe they did know. They changed it out on them without telling them.
That's an interesting point, because you're right. As they went in there and you have all your documents uploaded to your portal so you can see everything, there was a rejection letter. That is so interesting if that's what happened. After trying to get BYU officials to talk with them, the Johansons said they eventually learned the acceptance was a mistake. I was
they couldn't
really
even
mad.
talk to anybody at first. They're trying
No.
to talk to them. That they
No.
won't talk to them.
Yep. They won't talk to them. I know this story is really heartbreaking. If you've gone
The
through any
kid.
kind of process where you're hoping to get a job or into school, yes, and then no, like Bill said so eloquently. Let's see. I was really mad. Owen Johansson said they could have done it in a better way. And that's what you're trying to say, RFM. So
Oh, and you're better off.
now, I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at his little desk here. There's some kind of interesting things on it.
What's right there next to his left hand? First off, is that some Kleenex? And what's next to that, Rebecca? Can you see?
It looks like lotion, but I'm gonna focus on the picture of Tom Selleck up
Is
there
it Jergens?
at the top. I think it is Jergens. Yeah. So here we go. The whole experience, he added, left him pretty sad. His mother said she was disappointed that the university had only reached out to apologize to her and her husband, but not to her son directly. Talia Johnson wants BYU to honor his acceptance. Now that's interesting. I don't want them to do it just for Owen. I want them to do it for those 8 other students. I want all of the 9 students to be admitted into BYU. She said it is the right thing to do. And I feel like I took a close-up of Tom Selleck. I think it's what Tom Selleck would want to happen too.
Yes,
'cause he's a good
absolutely.
guy.
Was that on the mantle? That hunky
was.
picture of Tom Selleck?
There's got to be a story there. I'm not sure what it is. So, Bill,
Does it
what
go
do you
along with the
think?
Kleenex?
Yeah.
And I like the way his mom puts it. I don't want it for my kid. I want it for those 8 other kids and my kid.
Exactly. And I thought this was a huge number. We're going to talk about this in a minute. But Bill, what do you think? Should BYU do this? Should they let the 9 kids in? I mean, it just seems so mean.
On one hand, that's not fair, right? Like,
Yeah.
there are probably other kids who deserved it more. So if you're going to let 9 kids in, you let the next most qualified 9 in.
Yeah.
On the other hand, this church has enough money, it could probably send half the active kids in the church free to college. And yeah, anyway.
I know.
I think they should let Tom Selleck in.
I think I wish he was at BYU when I was there. But now let me show you this next thing as I end here. I was like, does this happen very often? Is 9 a huge number? No. Look at some of these numbers. University of Kentucky in 2021, 500,000 acceptance letters went out.
Erroneous?
Yes. If you look through these numbers, some at 48,000, 4,000. I mean, 9 is not, I mean, I know it's important to those 9, but we've seen some major computer glitches here. So look at some of these big numbers. 800, the 500,000 just killed me. That's, 500,000 miserable people. So anyway, that's why I have a picture down here of excited and then not so excited.
I
So
wonder how those universities handled telling the people that they'd screwed it up.
yep, exactly. And I kind of asked AI that question. I'm like, what do
Oh.
they do? I know, look at that. I know. And they kind of said, that they immediately reverse it. They let them know, they apologize, and they give an explanation. They offer counseling and support, which you might need. This could be completely devastating and soul crushing to a kid. They promise that they're going to look at their procedures, make sure it doesn't happen to anybody else. And it looks like other parents do reach out and say, can you just let them in? And they always say, nope, that's not going to happen. So
You have to say no.
you have to say no. I agree with Bill too. And in what he said, you do, then you'd have to let the next tier in. So sad situation all around, a BYU boo-boo. And I hope that these kids, like Bill, you said, anybody can go to UVU. There are colleges there where you can still have the BYU type experience and go to UVU right next door. So that's the end of my story. If you guys have any final thoughts on that, RFM or Bill, or we'll
I
go
just
back
want
to
to
Bill.
tell Owen, this is the BYU experience. And if you got admitted there, this would be just the beginning, believe me.
That may be true.
Well, they could certainly kiss some booty
No.
and make things better. But we probably ought to just go to the next story, which also involves some kissing, but not booty.
Yes. So charges refiled. I didn't even know they were dismissed, but they were. We'll talk about that tonight. Charges refiled against Layton school employee accused of kissing a minor. by Serena Troutvine. This was posted February 19th, ABC4 News. Layton, Utah, charges alleging a Layton Junior High School employee unlawfully kissed a 17-year-old on multiple occasions have been refiled in a new case. So what happened to the old one? On January 3rd, Haley Lunt, 44, it's H-A-L-I. Haley Lunt, 44, was charged with 2 counts of unlawful kissing of a minor, a Class A misdemeanor. Those charges were dismissed without prejudice on February 11th. Charges being dismissed without prejudice, by the way, means that they can be refiled at a later date. If it's dismissed with prejudice, that means they cannot be filed again. This is without prejudice. According to a motion to dismiss filed on January 11th, Lunt's attorney stated that the Children's Justice Center, pictured here, the CJC, was refusing to provide the interview that allegedly incriminated Lunt for them to review. Okay, this is incredible to me. What goes on at the CJC? Well, I'll tell you what goes on in court when the CJC says you can't have a copy of it for the defense. The judge says, okay, well, this case is dismissed. On February 9th, the judge proposed an order to compel the release of the CJC interview with the alleged victim. It did not end up being signed, and instead, the judge decided to dismiss the case. Boy, there's a lot of stuff going on in that courtroom, and the judge ain't happy with the prosecutor. The February 11th order reads that the judge agreed with the motion to dismiss. However, both charges were dismissed without prejudice, meaning that the prosecution could later refile charges if they have more sufficient evidence or fix the issue that led to the dismissal. In other words, provide the freaking interview from the CJC, right? Well, they refiled the charges, but they didn't produce the interview. On February 12th, new charges were filed against Lunt for the same incident. She is again facing 2 counts of unlawful kissing of a minor. It does not appear that the interview has been presented in this new filing at this time. And if that appearance is correct, the judge is going to dismiss it again, this time with prejudice, and hopefully sanction the hell out of the prosecutor's office, or at least the CJC, or maybe both. Your thoughts, Bill?
This is the funny business that happens in a court that folks like Rebecca and I never get to see, but which you've lived a lifetime of experiencing. What do you, as a lawyer, what do you make of this? What do you think's going on here?
I think the CJC thinks it's above the law. They see themselves, for whatever reason, as protecting the 17-year-old child, but this can't be the first interview that they've ever had. What goes on there? Why are they not producing this interview to the defense? If the defense does not have this interview, then that case should not go forward because his due process rights are being violated by the state. Produce the interview. Is there a reason you're not? There can be no reason good enough to satisfy the law and the Constitution and this judge who's doing the right thing, in my opinion. Rebecca, your thoughts?
Yeah, I am talking to some people behind the scenes about this, and they are saying that this Children's Justice Department or service is just extremely protective over the privacy of all of their clients. And it is that extreme protection and care for this 17-year-old that is causing, this perhaps not to be released in the way that everybody wants. So I don't know how that tracks with what you know, because as Bill said, we don't know all the inner workings, but people that I'm talking to are just saying it's because of extreme care for the privacy of this child, 17.
They can have all the extreme care that they want, but those charges will remain dismissed. I mean, there's no way that the defense does not get that interview. And this seems very apparent to me. Is it apparent to both of you why that is?
Yeah, if you're going to have charges against you, you deserve to have access to all the evidence for or against you and to be able to present that in a courtroom with some exceptions, but this not being one of them.
Yeah, see, and what the heck the complaining witness actually said happened? Yeah, it could not be more important.
RFM,
Go ahead.
Sorry, can you think of a time where evidence is allowed to be held away from the jury or from the
Sure.
case?
All the time.
Can you give an
I
example?
have made a career out of suppressing evidence.
Can you give an example of a good reason why you could?
Well, sure. There's a lot of reasons. One that doesn't happen so much anymore is having custodial interrogation by law enforcement without Miranda. That would be one thing. That doesn't happen so much anymore because they're so well trained, as a general rule, officers are, to do Miranda. But also unlawful search. That's a big one. Boy, that was a speciality of mine, with search and seizure law. Unlawful searches with or without a warrant. I've successfully gotten stuff suppressed that was seized without a warrant, and I've gotten stuff suppressed that was seized with a warrant because the warrant itself was defective in some way or other.
Interesting.
Yeah, and if you got a guy who's on trial for theft, I mean, you could have a felony rape conviction in his background. The jury's never going to hear that because it has nothing to do with the charge at hand, right?
So
Yeah.
what about the fact that she said, yes, everything the witnesses are saying happened, everything the young man said happened. She sort of confessed, if you call that a confession. Does that mean nothing without the statement of the alleged victim? If she said, yep, that happened, and even gave more details.
Let me try and express how significant it is that the judge dismissed this case. And he had proposed an order, the judge had, dismissing the case. Both those things are significant. What a judge is instructed to do under the law is, if there's a problem or if there's a failure on the side of one party or another, to take into account and look at various options of increasing a penalty. You could suppress certain evidence. You could say, okay, well, we're going to sanction your office $500, or we're going to do this, we're going to do that. The last thing, this is like lethal force for a police officer, okay? That's the last thing that you would go to, is lethal force. That's what a dismissal is. Well, dismissal without prejudice, but that's coming unless I guarantee you, that's coming unless the CJC lets loose of that interview. I would be surprised if this is the first time that this has happened. I mean, the CJC does interviews all the time, and I expect that they've worked with the sheriff's office and the police agencies, and I'm surprised if this is the first time it's happening. It's with a 17-year-old boy. And I only say that because there's nothing about that would make me think that this is an exceptional case that they're investigating and not giving up the interview. But they're going to lose any contract they have with police or sheriff's office. I mean, you've got to give it up. Otherwise, you're useless to us, right? As a law enforcement agency, we're not going to let you interview our witnesses or our potential victims if you're not going to give us the reports later, and the case gets dismissed because of you. So maybe there's new management over there at the CJC, and there should be newer management. Just some thoughts.
Well, there's that. I guess we have yet to see how this one turns out. All right. Next up, we've got the church in something about a logo, correct?
That's right. Just a quick little update because everybody is talking about this. And as we know, church logos have been in the news a lot lately. They kind of said they had some kind of priority control over John DeLynn being able to use, I think they said, upward lines and the color blue, because that's their logo. So they're really trying to hold on to that. John DeLynn's in mediation about his logo and his name. And then all of a sudden, a few days ago, the church logo suddenly turned to purple. Everybody was trying to figure out what was going on. I did a little research, and the first time that I found this has happened is in 2022. Which is interesting because what purple signifies, what it means is it's the color of Lent. And this is why they changed it. This is to celebrate Lent, right? So I have this up here. Why did the LDS Church logo suddenly change to a purple color? Purple is the color that represents Lent. The official LDS Church handbook says members do not celebrate Lent or Holy Week. Again, I'm just going to put this up here every single time until they take it out of the handbook. But it looks like since around 2022, which corresponds exactly with when they started in conference, having people give talks like Elder Stevenson saying, what's wrong with you guys? Celebrate Easter. Celebrate that Palm Sunday. Easter should be as big as Christmas. Why have you not been doing this? And again, I will answer that because we were pretty much told not to do that. We were told all of those were false traditions, of the apostasy. But yeah, here we have purple, and I'm guessing it'll be purple for all of Lent. And then interestingly, the color of Palm Sunday, which now the LDS Church celebrates like crazy on Temple Square in the Tabernacle. They had a Palm Sunday celebration with waving of the fronds. My parents would be rolling over in their graves to see that. The color of Palm Sunday is red. So won't it be interesting if their logo changes to red that day? But again, Christian tradition and trying to appear more overtly Christian. RFM, what do you think? And then Bill, about this logo change. Like I said, it's a quick story, but everybody is talking about this. I just want to make sure everybody understood it is to celebrate or acknowledge Lent. RFM, what do you think?
I think it's a good thing that John DeLynn changed his color to orange and not to purple.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine? That would have just been the end. I'm sorry.
I don't have anything to say here per se. If they're just going to change their color for a holiday that for a religious observance day that they've never ever practiced and looked down upon, it's such a strange thing to see. But we've already hit on this last week, and
yep.
It's still just as strange to me as it was a week ago.
I'm looking forward to Halloween when it's black and orange.
That's possible. We don't know what's going to happen.
It looks like a pumpkin, a carved pumpkin with Jesus coming out of the door, the pumpkin.
We'll see. But this Easter season, I'm telling you again, it is really heating up with the rhetoric around all of this and all the signs in the heavens and the signs on the earth, and Easter's coming, and the second coming is the first week of April, General Conference. So get ready, everybody.
Boy, that's never happened before. We've never had a comet. We've never had a blood moon, have we?
No.
Oh my gosh, but they're all happening together. What are the odds? Well, the odds are pretty good when you're dealing with thousands and thousands of years.
Well, in that story, it looked like the church is sort of shooting from the hip as it figures out how to take on mainstream Christian religious observances and how to celebrate them. But this next story, someone's actually shooting from the hip towards the church. So RFM, an update on the gang violence.
Yes, the Tongans, the Crips. Not the Bloods this time. It was the Tongan Crips. 2 alleged Tongan Crip gang members face firearm charges following Salt Lake City shooting at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This is from the United States Attorney's Office, District of Utah webpage. I thought it'd be fun to go here. This was posted Friday, February 27, 2026. So Friday last. Salt Lake City, Utah. An indictment was unsealed today, charging 2 alleged Tongan Crip gang members, TCG, Tongan Crip gang members. It's bad when you have an acronym. You're that well known. One of whom is a convicted felon already with firearm crimes following the January shooting at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Salt Lake City. 2 were killed, by the way. 6 were injured in the shooting in the parking lot of that building. And it was at a church funeral. They're killing people at a funeral. Ryan Daniel Tutai, aka, and it's Toutai, aka Lost One, 32 years of age, of Salt Lake City, and Faniva Pomona Maka, aka Finlock, Finloc, 26, of Mill Creek, Utah, were indicted by a federal grand jury on February 25th, 2026. This is a picture at that funeral of Ryan Daniel Tutai. January 7th, 2026 was the date of the funeral. He was the one who was holding what looked like a Corona bottle in his left hand. By the way, Tutai is the tall, skinny one. That's to keep him distinguished from the other person. We'll have a picture of the other person here in a bit. According to the allegations in court documents, both Tutai and Maka had previously been pictured with one of the firearms that was used at the shooting on January 7th, 2026. As alleged, on January 7th, 2026, the Salt Lake City Police Department received numerous reports of shots fired at an LDS church in Salt Lake City. Upon officers' arrival, they encountered multiple victims with gunshot wounds. By the way, these are pictures that were taken by the police. This is one picture of 2 guns found on a seat of a car. Apparently, here's a close-up of the Ruger, and above that is the serial number, which they're able to locate. So they can identify this gun with specificity, and they found this gun at the scene. As law enforcement secured and processed the scene, they recovered 40 caliber casings, 9mm caliber casings, and a Ruger 9mm semi-automatic pistol with serial number. There's the serial number, right? 322-90515. Tutai was on scene when officers arrived and was detained after he failed to comply with officers' request to move away from first responders rendering aid to a victim. Pursuant to a search warrant, Tutai's phone, the tall guy, Tutai's phone was seized and contained photo and video evidence. It's what was found in his phone that's the basis of both of these charges, by the way. Tutai's phone was seized and contained photo and video evidence that he had previously possessed the Ruger 9mm with the same serial number recovered from the scene. Tutai was identified as the creator of the images and videos based on a distinctive tattoo on his left hand. See the distinctive tattoo on the left hand? This is Tutai's left hand. If you see this picture and you look real close at his left hand there, you can see that he is the one with that tattoo. According to court documents, Tutai's phone also contained documentation of events hours before the shooting. Tutai took several photos and videos of himself and his co-defendant, Maka. Screenshots. There's Maka, the guy with the black hat. So he's a big guy with a beard, as opposed to Tutai, who I believe here has a mask on. Tutai took several photos and videos of himself and his co-defendant, Maka. Screenshots from videos depict Maka holding a small black pistol. You can see it there. That is consistent with the Ruger LC9. As a multi-convicted felon, Maka is restricted from owning or possessing a firearm and ammunition. So he's charged with unlawful possession of a firearm because he's a felon. That's Maka. There were 3 photos that they had as part of the filings in this case. Here's another one showing Maka with a gun. Prior to the shooting, Maka, who was on parole for a prior conviction, was ordered to wear a GPS ankle monitor. Evidence from the GPS ankle monitor combined with physical evidence collected from the scene strongly corroborates Maka's possession of the Ruger firearm on January 7th, 2026. Additionally, photo and video evidence show Tutai and Maka claiming TCG, remember that's that Tongan Crip gang, membership and interacting with other TCG members. And here's the third picture. And here it looks like it is not Maka who's holding the gun. This is a different gun being held by Tutai, it looks like. Okay. Tutai is charged with unlawful disposition of a firearm. And what that means is getting rid of it. Okay, so Tutai doesn't have the prior conviction that makes it a felony or a crime for him to possess a firearm, but he got rid of it unlawfully when he ditched it in the bushes by the church, is the allegation. Tutai is charged with unlawful disposition of a firearm. Maka is charged with felon in possession of a firearm. Their initial appearance on the indictment is scheduled for March 3rd. So that's tomorrow if the world don't end tonight. At 1:00 p.m. in courtroom 8.4 before a U.S. magistrate judge at the Orangey Hatch United States District Courthouse in downtown Salt Lake City. And here is something else that they had as part of the filings. It shows the church from the bird's eye view, the parking lot outside the church. And it says the image below provides an overview of the scene, including the approximate location of recovered evidence. Location information from Maka's ankle monitor is also highlighted. So you can see there's this blue box here in the middle of the parking lot, a little bit above the middle. That's where the 40 caliber casings were found. The red square just to the left and below the blue square, that's where the 9mm casings were found. And this X marks the spot in yellow. That is tracing Maka's movements by his ankle monitor. So he moves through both of those areas with both of the gun casings found on the the ground in the parking lot. Then he moves over here to bushes by the church, and you can see the green star there. It's green on green. Can you see that, Rebecca and Belle? The green star is where the gun was recovered. The one with the serial number. Then he goes back and then down and then back and then up and then taken off down what looks like Riverside. Okay. So those are the charges. Any comments? First off,
Can I ask
Belle.
a question
Yeah, you go.
about? Can
Yeah.
I ask a question about the ankle monitor? Is
Yeah.
that? I mean, to me, I think of like at home. You can't leave a certain perimeter. This must just be he can be out and about, but they want to be able to track him. Is that
Well, he's on parole
okay? He's on
for his
parole.
prior
Okay.
offense, the one that
Okay.
which I think was a robbery.
Okay.
So here's the thing. I had thought before that this was Maka's movements. Yeah, it is Maka's movements. I thought it was Tutai's movements because Tutai's the one who's getting charged with illegally discarding or disposing of a weapon. I'm not exactly sure how they're planning on proving that with Tutai, but I guess we'll see. Maybe that will be the subject of a preliminary hearing, even though it's a federal case. I got to tell you, I'm so sorry. I keep going into that one. That's the next story. Bill, did you have anything you wanted to say about it?
I think it's interesting that one, you have somebody wearing an ankle monitor who's continuing to commit crimes.
Mhm.
I guess that's probably not rare, but sort of in my world, you get one of those and you choose to be a really good boy from that point on.
You can't keep a good man down.
And the other thing is, if you're going to commit crimes, I wouldn't, be taking lots of pictures. I think the fact that they were taking photos of themselves as they're getting ready to do bad things is, I sort of have known all my life. Don't incriminate yourself.
I think that's just another Friday for these guys.
Yeah, well,
They're posing with their guns because they love their guns.
some people don't rehabilitate easily.
No, can I just say, make the comment on what is the most glaringly obvious thing here about these charges? Nobody's charged with murder. Nobody's charged with shooting anybody. They've got nothing because the Crips have closed ranks to the point where nobody's talking to the cops. These are low level. These are the kinds of offenses that are being charged, which are nothing compared to what was done there that night.
So they don't even know those are not the guns used in the shooting. They haven't matched bullets to those guns. They just happen to be guns that should not have been with those particular people. Is that what you're saying?
Apparently, they cannot prove who was shooting them.
Okay.
Kind of like the Corden case, right? You can't prove whether it was one or the other. So unless you can prove one or the other, it's neither.
Right. And there was all these other people there as well. With the Cordons, it was the two parents in the motel room. I know there was like grandparents and the sister next door, the nurse sister, the RN nurse. Yeah, sister, that whole story. But yeah, we've got multiple people it could be, but you've got to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this person, whoever that is the one who did it.
She was a NICU nurse just down the hall, which meant that she took care of children in children's wings of hospitals.
Yes.
Anyway, strange situation there. Well, talking about strange, Mormons in their soda pop, Rebecca.
Yeah, this is great. And I'm glad because our two last stories, both my story here and then Bill that's going to follow, they're kind of related in this way, which is great. So I saw this was in the New York Post and Fox picked it up. Mormon soda craze is replacing coffee and cocktails across America. And I think this is the bigger story and it's kind of interesting. I just had to put this picture here. Only a certain number of you will know that this is Laverne of Laverne and Shirley way back in the mid 70s. And she used to drink milk and Pepsi. Do you remember this, RFM?
I do.
Yeah, and I think that's the first dirty soda because a dirty soda is a soda that has all kinds of other ingredients, cream to make it creamier and fruit and things like that. So I just, a shout out to Laverne. She was doing it before any of the rest of it. So the reason that these dirty sodas are sweeping the country, and they literally are, Swig has like almost 70 locations, and that's just one of the more popular ones. These are the secret lives of Mormon wives, and they drink Swig all the time. They post about their favorite drink combination, and they keep it in the media. So everybody is very curious, because as Bill's going to go into next, Mormon moment kind of a thing. And what are these Mormons up to? Well, they're drinking soda because of their health code. Everybody seems to be recognizing that this is because of the word of wisdom. And the article kind of says, I'll paraphrase, the beverage known as a dirty soda originated in Utah with the Latter-day Saint culture, is rapidly expanding across the United States, offering non-alcoholic alternatives to coffee shops and bars. That's why this is so interesting. Dirty soda refers to traditional soft drink like a cola, Dr. Pepper, a Mountain Dew is a big base that you use, and you add flavored syrups and purees and sugars and actually not sugars all the time. You can get ones that are pretty healthy, and cream. And, you know, if you want to make one at home very simply, you just pour some Coke in a glass and put some coffee creamer in it. That really is as simple as you can get. And the trend developed partly because many members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints avoid alcohol and coffee. And I think they're trying to point out that more than just the drink, they're avoiding going to places where those things are served. So where do Mormons hang out, right? This is a new place. This is a new trend. You can't go to the bars. You can't be seen at Starbucks, even though they do have things there that don't have coffee in them. And so this is where they're going. So Swig and Fizz, different places like that, expanding nationwide. And here's a picture of exactly that. Coffee shop, right? You can't be seen there, even though there are other things that aren't coffee, and certainly not in a bar. So where do you go to hang out? If you're doing your ministering and you're like, hey, you want to just go down to the pub? No. Hey, you want to go to Starbucks? No. But you can say, let's meet at Swig. Let's have my favorite drink, the Founder, and let's talk about come follow me. So it all works. What they're saying is that younger Americans are drinking less alcohol. This is a known stat out there. The next generation is going, we're not going to do that. And consumers want a customizable, Instagram-friendly beverage. As you saw those pictures, right? Hold up my drink. What's my favorite? Look at my recipe here. They love it. And there's rising interest in fun social drinks that don't have caffeine, aren't coffee-based, and they're not alcohol. So I thought this was absolutely fascinating. And I came across, just as I was putting the slides together, a post, somebody not LDS, saying, what's up with this? Mormons and their soda bars, do they have these at home? And the answer was yes. People do have flavored syrups at home. They sell these things, especially for events, right? A wedding reception or a bridal shower, a baby shower. You're going to have your really awesome soda bar with fun cups and fun straws. It's just a thing to be really, really fun, where in the past it used to be get your Starbucks or, maybe make yourself a margarita, right? That is not happening, not only not in the LDS Church, but it's not happening in general with this next generation. So here's the part I thought was really interesting. Industry insiders believe that dirty soda represents more than a passing fad, describing it as a modern revival of the soda fountain culture. I think most of us are too young maybe to have experienced the soda fountain culture. So here's some retro pictures that it's been adapted for today's preferences. So major beverage companies are also experimenting with similar customizable soda concepts as the trend grows. I was at Chili's just the other day. Dirty soda was one of the offerings on the table. They had a cute little sign about it. And so it's just everywhere. And it started because of the word of wisdom. It started because here in Utah, we're not going to go to the bars and we're not going to go to the coffee shops. But what can we have? Sugary sodas. And again, I have to go on record by saying, do not judge somebody with a giant Swig cup. They have revivers. That's my favorite. Refreshers, where it's just sparkling water and fruit, maybe a sugar-free cream base. So it's not necessarily terrible for you. But have either of you ever even tried a dirty soda? Bill, have you tried anything like that?
Yeah, I've had the Dr. Pepper with the coconut cream in it. They're delicious.
Okay.
They're delicious. I will just say, at this point, science is pretty conclusive that coffee has health benefits and soda has none. And the high amounts of sugar we know aren't good for you. Lots of health issues that come from having a diet full of sugar. And we all get alcohol bad. Coffee some pros, some cons, but there are some health benefits out there that science and medical studies have shown. Soda, somewhere in between, better than alcohol, I'm sure, but probably not by much. And yet the Mormon culture stays away from one thing because a guy in the 1800s said God told him to do so.
Exactly.
And the other thing is completely on limits, even though it breaks some of the rules, at least that caffeine rule, which was part of the word of wisdom early on. And yet somehow Mormon Church has given everybody a workaround on caffeine and soda drinks. So
yeah. And then there's the Mormon palate, which tends to skew very sweet. I don't know if you guys noticed this, right? Because we were raised on a diet of brownies at the board party, cookies, soda. So even as adults, even when you step away, your palate tends to skew. You want things that are sweet. That's what you're comfortable eating, and you're not comfortable with the other. So soda, these kind of dirty sodas kind of, satisfy that, because they absolutely are on the sweeter side. So what about you RFM? Are there any of these things where you live? Any of these dirty soda establishments?
I will tell you that I think the reason that the taste buds of Mormons skews sweet is because they never learned to drink adult beverages.
Yes.
They're drinking kiddie stuff for the whole life and getting kiddie doctrine at church. I say that the only thing they need is a jukebox. They need a jukebox. Get jukeboxes in there and let's get those kids dancing. Now, about your question about whether I've had one, whenever I have a dirty soda, I insist that it be filled with Malibu.
Really interesting.
So, having said that, I need my Malibu. And the last thing is now all they have to do at what's this? It's called Gulp, Swig.
Swig, yes. Swig,
That's
Fizz,
Swig.
So Delicious. They're all kinds of cute names. And they're opening these like in Manhattan. Like they, upscale, very upscale. It's not just for little kids. Wow. This is something, that is becoming a huge trend. And like Bill said, just started because one guy said, let's not drink this, let's drink that, right? And everybody ran with it. So
it's great. Now all they need to do is put Book of Mormon verses on the bottom of the cups.
That's it.
it's coming. All right. And then our final story of the night, this one this was in the Deseret News. By the way, I think the timing on this is peculiar with the David Archuleta book in the Devout and what that book addresses. Keep that in mind as I read this, and we'll talk about David here in the next slide. But Deseret News put out an article that said this so-called Mormon moment isn't actually about religion. So right now the media is talking about this so-called Mormon moment, but Deseret News says this isn't about theology. It's not about temples. It's not about missionary work or anything spiritual. By the way, wouldn't the church love that kind of Mormon moment? This time, the spotlight is on a group of social media personalities and influencers with Utah and Mormon backgrounds who are becoming popular because of their looks, lifestyles, brands, TV appearances, and online following. Some of these are on shows like Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, Dancing with the Stars, The Bachelorette, which I think features, Taylor Frankie?
Yep, it's starting in just about a week.
Yep, and I have watched a few seasons of The Bachelor and Bachelorette, so this might be one I take in. We'll see what happens. But and it also includes others who are building big audiences on Instagram and TikTok. We talked about the gentleman who's called into the Young Men's Council, for instance, who had a big TikTok following, YouTube channel. The buzz isn't driven by what they believe or how active they are in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but by how much attention they draw in mainstream culture. The church seems to be, without saying it directly in this article, by the way, this is just a synopsis, but in the article, it's like they're trying to avoid saying negative things, but sort of hinting at these Mormons are in the news for something other than the reasons we'd like them to be. It goes on, it says, this means what's being labeled as a Mormon moment has very little to do with real faith and more to do with aesthetics, personalities, and algorithms. Some people outside the church see these figures and think they represent Mormonism, even though their connection to the religion varies widely. At the same time, other Latter-day Saints are trying to carve out spaces online to talk about belief and doctrine. And we talked about this last week with all of the believing podcasts that are out there. Belief and doctrine in ways that make sense to younger audiences. So the conversation isn't really about religion itself. It's about visibility, identity, and how culture interprets a label that started as a faith identifier. Again, these are all the kinds of ideas they're pointing to in the article, but I wondered here, is that true? And I say that because if we look at David Archuleta, former American Idol star, released his memoir, Devout. And again, he was just interviewed on Mormon Stories with John DeLynn. This book is a reflection of his struggles as a gay member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and his journey of coming out and leaving the church. Archuleta's memoir aims to educate others about the challenges faced by the LGBTQ plus individuals, faced by those individuals, and the importance of acceptance and support. This book is a testament to Archuleta's journey and his desire to share a story with authenticity and vulnerability. And so in that Deseret News article, they were saying things, and I actually think it's the opposite. I think he's certainly speaking to theology, things spiritual, and it has a lot to do with real faith. It really does deal with Mormonism, the religion itself. So there is this one instance in the Mormon moment. Well, maybe that's not the only one. You know, they're pointing to, without saying it, by the way, I'll just note, this has to do with that interview with Mormon Stories. One of the things that David Archuleta said about his conversation with M. Russell Ballard is M. Russell Ballard told David, quote, "Well, David, we've prayed about the matter surrounding LGBTQ people as brethren, but actually have never received an answer on it. We just kind of have to guess what we think is the right thing to do." There's your prophet, seers, and revelators. I can't hear you, RFM.
He's like,
And God is okay with that.
Yeah. It's such a strange thing that you have leaders of the church tell you that they're not getting answers, and then they still do the hateful thing. Strange. Okay, I just wanted to know, in other places, again, this Mormon moment does have to do with Mormonism. All the various TV shows, remind me the one with the Spider-Man actor.
That was
you're talking
Under the
Banner of Heaven. Yeah.
So there you've got violence. You've got stuff having to do with Mormon belief, faith crisis. You've got The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, which definitely deals with Mormon patriarchy. You've had TV shows that have dealt with fundamentalism, Mormonism. And by the way, to the LDS Church, you don't get to get completely off the hook when people talk about the fundamentalist version of Mormonism, because there is so much of you still in that tradition as well. A lot of this Mormon moment absolutely has to do with the church. It has to do with unhealthy things going on within it. And as much as the Deseret News would like to just swipe their hand across and make it all be something else, that just isn't the case. I want to note too, the Mormon moment is, I think, interesting in other ways. We live in a time now where when people leave the religion, they feel safe and confident to put it out there. And so here you have somebody probably at Costco, and I love the sweatshirt he's wearing. Beer should be 10% and tithing should be 3.2. I thought that was great. But I've gone out lots of times to various stores here in Utah, and you run into people who are wearing t-shirts or jackets, hats, sweatshirts that point to this sort of a underlying humorous criticism of Mormonism. And then I thought we'd end the show on a funny little side note here. It even shows up in stand-up comedy. Now, this guy does use two bad words. I did beep them out. You're not going to hear them, but you'll be able to make out what they were, unfortunately. But listen, this is a non-Mormon guy. You can tell by his accent that he isn't, I don't think, born and raised with American tradition all around him, but he has a familiarity with Mormonism. I ran into this back when I was teaching a non-credited class at Bowling Green State University for senior citizens. They were putting out into the community for anybody who had some interesting expertise to come into the school and teach a non-credited class for sort of furthering education for seniors. And I did one on Mormonism. And I did it 2 days one week and then 2 days the next. So 4 days total. And 2 of the days were spent on history of the church and 2 of the days were spent on doctrine. And there were 10 or 15 people. This was years and years and years ago. But there were 10 or 15, maybe 20 folks that came to that. And I was quite surprised at how much people who weren't members of the church knew about Mormonism. And they knew things that the believers, I had a member of the bishopric who was with me, and I had the full-time missionaries who also went with me to this thing. And there was no doubt that the non-members knew more than the Mormons did. I say that to say, here's a guy in the modern moment, in what they're calling this Mormon moment. Again, we've got instances of the church trying to put itself out there more publicly. TV shows and movies are addressing Mormon history and unhealthy mechanisms in the church. You've got reality TV shows that are putting Mormonism at the forefront, that I think are displaying things like patriarchy with the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. You've got David Archuleta and his falling away and writing about it, singing about it. It wasn't too long ago. You've got Imagine Dragons doing what they did. You've got Tyler Glenn from Neon Trees. So here's this stand-up comedian. I'll put this up on the screen with the sound. And I got to wait a second for this. StreamYard blocks the thing I need. Okay, and here we go.
Apparently, there are 3 layers of Mormon heaven. Okay? And the coolest part is that even if you're not a Mormon, you still get to go to heaven. I thought that was pretty cool. So the bottom layer, that's the worst one. Okay, that's where we're all gonna go. This exact same show, up there. Let's run the whole back. Now, the middle layer, that's where the Mormons who are bad go. Okay, these guys broke the rules. Okay, they drank matcha or something. The top layer, that's where the best Mormons go. These guys are elite. Okay, elite, never touched a woman ever. Wow. They get everything they could ever want up there. Okay, no people of color. Wow, oh my God, they're excited. Wow. Jack Harlow's performing. Oh, wow. I'm listening to all that and I go, wow, so there's no Mormon hell. He goes, no. The only people who go to real Mormon hell are the people who learn about Mormon religion and decide to go against it. He said one of the core principles of Mormonism is actually, I go, la 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 la. Shut up, what are you doing? You send me to hell, you little freak. What are you doing? He finished that sentence. Mormon Jesus like, we got him. No, I didn't hear it. Mormon Jesus in the bush. Come on. I go, sneaky. He's like, I almost got you. I go, you did. You sneaky little Mormon. You almost got me. Yeah, I didn't grow up religious. I thank God every day.
So I'll just say, the Mormon moment is a lot of things, and it is people all over the place. It's somebody wearing a t-shirt, someone telling a joke, and the crowd's laughing. They get it. They're also going like, ooh, that didn't sound healthy or feel healthy. Maybe the LDS Church could learn a little more from the Mormon moment rather than just dismiss it. Thoughts from the two of you? And this will be the last story. I can't hear you, Rebecca.
Now that's one for each of us.
Dang it. We all did it. I have like jets flying over my house. No, I was
You
going
thought
to
you were
say,
going to get out of this unscathed.
yeah, no, I'm not. At the very last minute, I just choked. It's true. But no, I pushed back really hard on this. This is not the Mormon moment. This is not Mormonism. And I've seen so many articles like this, like you talked about, Bill, and other kinds of things where they say, sure, there's Mormons in the news, but they're not real Mormons and they don't reflect us. I push back extremely hard. That is not true. They're putting that information out there so that faithful members don't get concerned by seeing. You went through some of the information. I just made a list here. So on Secret Live for Mormon Wives, the finale this season ended with a baby blessing. You know, they couldn't get permission of one of the baby daddies and the bishop wouldn't let him do it. So a father did the baby blessing at home. That is Mormonism. That's a new kind of Mormonism where not everybody can go to the church to do it, but you're going to have a baby blessing, right? Two of the girls, while they were on a trip to confront Marciano, went to the temple. Okay, so they have temple recommends First they confronted him, then they went to the temple, I think is how it went. But again, these are Mormons. These are Mormons living full lives, not just what the church wants to put forward as actual Mormonism. So I think about Real Housewives, right? Of Real Housewives of Salt Lake. They covered Heather Gay's faith crisis and deconstruction the entire time. We all know who that is. They covered another woman whose son went on a mission, or maybe it was not Heather, it was someone else. So they are talking about Mormonism. These are real Mormons living real Mormon lives, even if it is not what the regular mainstream members want to see. Talk about Elizabeth Smart documentary, right? Completely informed by Mormon, the religion, the doctrine, what happened to her. And that was shown very clearly in a recent documentary. Talk about Jody Hildebrandt, another documentary. Mormonism through and through in there, definitely lived in a terrible, terrible way, but it's all related to Mormonism. So I would say to say that it has nothing to do with Mormonism is not correct. It's just the parts that they don't want people to see so overtly. So I feel like I'm on a soapbox, but I'm so tired of hearing that none of these relate to Mormonism, because they do completely.
Well, yeah, it involves Mormons, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the one thing they weren't saying. And they're all Mormons. But what they're saying in this article, as I understood it, is only if you believe everything that the leaders tell you to believe and do everything that the leaders tell you to do, can you qualify to represent Mormonism. I think that's probably not true, but it definitely explains why it is that this guy has never had a TV show.
I'd watch that.
Well, there's that. Okay, well, we're at the end. What we've got now is what you guys have each got going on this week. And Rebecca, let's start with you.
Oh, yes. We always have Mormonish. It is always on Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. We have, do you recognize my guest there, Bill in RFM? He has been on your program a couple times. Patrick, do you recognize him? Maybe a little bit? Like at length, he has been on your program.
I recognize Sidney Rigdon.
Okay, well, there you go. He's been on Mormonism After Dark. You have let him speak multiple times on Mormonism After Dark about his data and information. So I have.
Oh, is this the guy? This is the guy. Is this going to be an argument, I hope, between him and Dr. Lundwall?
Oh, no. This is going to be very fascinating. He's done a lot of research on the three voices in the Book of Mormon and some of the data point analysis. You're going to find this fascinating. And believe it or not, Dr. Lundwall and Patrick were mission companions. So it's sort of a reunion, and it's going to be pretty fascinating. Yeah.
Why does John look so much older than Patrick?
Yeah, I don't know. He's wearing the hat. Maybe. I don't know. But yeah, they shared some of their really funny stories. They were APs together, driving around Canada, really? Checking on all the other missionaries out there. So we do talk about that. But the title is with Sidney Rigdon, the founder of Mormonism. It's a very, very interesting episode, a little bit of history, a little bit of kind of groundbreaking research on the three voices in the Book of Mormon and some data point survey analysis. So it's a little scholarly, but I think you're going to like it. It's Tuesday night at 6 p.m.
I think John went on his mission when he was 40.
Oh my gosh.
All right. And then Wednesday night, we've got an episode on Mormonism Live called The LDS Label Machine. I don't remember offhand the author. We'll talk about it Wednesday, but there was a long article written maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago at this point, maybe longer. And this person went throughout Mormon history, locating all the quotes where church leadership puts labels on people who stay and labels on people who go. And we will focus on the labels primarily on people who leave and how the church would like to define them, how the church would like to label them, and see what we learn when we go through how the church has chosen to identify those who don't believe in the system and step away.
I don't know if it was original to him, but I think Randy Bell came up with a list. It was like alphabetical and had one A through Z with these kind of names.
Yeah, this will be the quotes in the context they were given, but I think I remember when Randy did that. So there's that. And then I've got something coming out this week called The Lost 116 Pages. It'll be a playoff of what I shared at Thrive. And then I've got a bunch of these that I'm kind of a project coming out where I'm going to share a bunch of these. This is the first one, and it's based on a book that I just published that's on Amazon. But this will be an interesting series of 30 various topics where you can just clearly lay out that logically the church doesn't have a leg to stand on. And I think putting them all together will be overwhelming. So there's that. And RFM, your episode that just came out.
Yeah, premiered Saturday night, blowing up the Book of Mormon, technically nuking the Book of Mormon is the title. And we are taking on Blake Ostler and his absolutely ridiculous expansion theory for the Book of Mormon, showing why it holds no water whatsoever. And then, in a friendly manner, inviting Blake Ostler on if he wants to convince me otherwise.
Nice. Well, there's that. Okay, that's it for the night. Folks, please do like and subscribe. That way you're getting all the episodes that we do here at the Mormon Newscast. Check out Mormonish, check out Radio Free Mormon, check out Mormonism Live, and we'll see all of you next week, next Monday, 6 p.m. And until then, this is us signing off for the Mormon Newscast. Bye-bye.
That's a wrap for this week's edition of the Mormon Newscast. We appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Keep the conversation going and stay informed on all things Mormonism. Until next week, wishing you peace and joy. See you next Monday at 6 p.m. on the Mormon Newscast.